All right, so ready to explore a future where firemen don't put out fires, they start them. That's the world that Ray Bradbury created in Fahrenheit 451, and that's what we're diving deep into today.
And we're talking, like, really deep.
Oh, yeah.
Like, we've got excerpts. Yeah, we'll be reading those. But we also dug up some of Bradbury's own essays and letters.
Wow.
A real behind-the-scenes peek at how this whole iconic book came to be, how he thought of it.
It's always kind of blown my mind, that he wrote this back in the 50s.
Right.
It feels more relevant now than ever.
Totally. It's like he had this, like, eerie premonition almost about how technology could be used not just for, good things,
Right.
but to, like, dull our minds if we don't use it carefully.
Yeah, if we're not careful.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get into it.
The story drops us right into this world, right, with Guy Montag, who's a fireman, but he's surprisingly okay with torching books.
Yeah,
right?
and that's what's so unsettling about it.
Yeah.
Bradbury doesn't make book burning this, evil act, right? Like, done in the shadows.
Right.
It's become normal, routine, every day. People like Montag actually, find a twisted sense of enjoyment in it.
It's like he's showing us how easy it is to just become, desensitized to something horrifying.
Yeah.
If it's presented as, the norm.
Totally.
Yeah.
And that, ties directly into Bradbury's own anxieties about censorship.
Right.
I mean, he actually had publishers try to censor Fahrenheit 451.
Oh, wow.
The book itself.
Yeah, and you can just, you can feel that anger and frustration just, seeping through his letters when he talks about it.
So he'd seen it firsthand.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
He'd seen firsthand how, those in power, they try to control what we read, what we think.
Wow, so this book was like his warning shot then.
Absolutely. It's a huge warning shot.
Yeah.
He's showing us this, extreme version of what happens when a culture becomes too, quote-unquote, homogenized.
Right.
Where everyone's, consuming the same stuff, thinking the same way.
Yeah.
And that's when things get,
Dangerous.
dangerous.
Yeah, that whole bit with the parlor families
Yeah.
glued to their wall-sized TVs, right? Barely even talking to each other. It's eerily similar to what we see today, with people glued to their phones.
Yeah, it's that fear of, shallow entertainment just replacing real human connection, real thought,
Yeah.
Bradbury was worried that we become so obsessed with easy distractions
Right.
that we'd forget how to actually, think
Yeah.
for ourselves.
Think critically, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And those parlor families, right, they're content.
Right.
But at what cost?
It's like they're living in this constant state of numbness.
Exactly. And they don't even realize what they're missing.
Yeah.
That's the real tragedy of it.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's where Clarisse comes in.
Oh, yeah.
This, free-thinking teenager who makes Montag question everything.
Right.
She's like this breath of fresh air in this, stifling world.
Clarisse, the one who actually stops and, looks at the stars and smells the roses.
Yeah, exactly.
While everyone else is just, rush around, right?
Exactly, yeah.
I think I read somewhere that he based her on a real person.
He did, yeah, and we'll get to that a little bit later.
Oh, okay.
But it just goes to show you how much Bradbury valued that kind of, curiosity and independent thinking.
Yeah.
Those qualities,
Right.
to him, those were essential
Yeah.
for, a really fulfilling life.
Yeah.
And Clarisse, in a lot of ways, represents this.
Yeah.
Represents the hope that those qualities can still exist,
Right.
even in a world that seems determined to stamp them out.
So we've got this world where books are basically outlawed.
Right.
People are, plugged into this constant stream of entertainment, and thinking for yourself is not exactly encouraged.
Not encouraged at all.
Right.
In fact, it's almost dangerous.
Right.
It's almost dangerous.
It's, frowned upon.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
And yet, even in this, kind of bleak landscape, right?
Yeah.
Bradbury gives us these these little glimpses of hope, these
Right.
whispers of resistance.
Interesting.
And that's what we're gonna kind of explore in the next part of our deep dive here.
Okay. So if this world is all about suppressing knowledge and thought, right? What makes books so dangerous?
Yeah.
What makes them worth risking everything for?
That really is the central question that Bradbury's kind of grappling with. In one of the excerpts, there's this great line where one character says, "There must be something in books things we can't imagine to make a woman stay in a burning house.
Right.
There must be something there.
Oh.
You don't stay for nothing.
Yeah, that is powerful.
Right,
Like,
huh?
what could be so important, you know?
Yeah.
That you would literally rather burn than, like, live without. Yeah.
And you have to remember, like, this is a world that's, like, designed to eliminate discomfort.
Right.
Like, people are just constantly bombarded with, like,
Right.
easy answers and, like, mindless distractions, you know?
Yeah.
So, like, why would anyone, like, actively choose the difficult path?
Right.
You know, the path that makes you think and question and wrestle with stuff.
It's like choosing the red pill over the blue pill.
Totally.
Right.
It's like Bradbury's arguing that books offer us that red pill.
Right.
You know, he contrasts he talks about the pores and the texture of a book,
Yep.
you know,
Very
like
cool.
those details
Yeah.
that kind of make you slow down and really think with the overwhelming, you know,
Right.
numbing sensory overload of the parlor family's entertainment.
It's like the difference between scrolling through, like, social media, right,
Totally.
for hours.
Yeah.
And actually, like, sitting down with a good book.
Right. One washes over you and you're just kind of like left feeling like kind of empty and restless afterwards.
Yeah.
And the other like stays with you.
Right.
It makes you think. It makes you feel.
Yeah, it makes you feel something.
It makes you feel something. Yeah.
Right. And in Fahrenheit 451, it's those people, right? Yeah.
Who seek out that deeper meaning, that deeper thought.
Mm-hmm.
They become a threat
They do.
Because they're like, well, why aren't you just like going with the flow?
Right, exactly, because they actually like represent a challenge to the status quo, right?
Yes.
They remind people that there's more to life than just like consuming and conforming.
Right. So how does Bradbury like show that resistance?
So this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
He introduces us to this group called the Book People.
Okay.
And these are like you know, they're almost like outcasts from society.
Right. Okay.
But they have they've memorized entire books
wow.
to preserve them.
Wow, that's commitment.
Right.
They're like becoming the books.
They become these like living libraries, right? Yeah.
Carrying these stories and ideas within themselves.
That's like next level.
It's this like really powerful image of like resilience, right?
Yeah.
It shows that even in the darkest of times, even when knowledge is like actively being suppressed,
Yeah.
the human spirit like finds a way.
Right. And that drive to preserve stories, to
Yeah.
pass on ideas.
It's not just about entertainment for Bradbury.
Okay.
It's about holding on to what makes us human.
Yeah, so
No.
we got this battle playing out
Yeah.
between the people who are trying to like control information and the people who are trying to like keep it alive.
Mhm.
But where did all this come from for Bradbury?
Yeah.
Like what sparked this whole thing for him to even like write about it in the first place?
Yeah. Well, you know, it wasn't just this like abstract fear of the future, you know?
Right.
It was like deeply rooted in his own experiences.
Oh, right. He had that whole thing with the publishers, right?
Yeah.
Trying to censor Fahrenheit 451.
He did.
Like his own book.
Yeah, and that wasn't like an isolated incident for him.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Bradbury lived through like a really intense time
Okay.
politically and socially.
Okay.
You know, McCarthyism, the Cold War,
Mm-hmm.
like censorship and fear-mongering were like rampant.
So he was seeing this stuff play out
Oh yeah.
in the real world
In the real world.
and then like channeling it into his writing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And in his essays, he like talks about how Fahrenheit 451 started as like this short story, almost like this spontaneous outburst of anger
Really?
against censorship.
Wow. So this book that has become like this, you know, this classic, this
Uh-huh.
like, you know,
Yeah.
symbol of like intellectual freedom and like fighting for that. It started with him just like needing to get something off his chest.
In a way, yeah.
Wow.
But as he wrote, you know, it
Mhm.
grew into something like much, much bigger.
Right.
It became this like warning about the dangers of complacency,
Right.
you know, about letting others control what we read, what we think.
Right. It's like, don't wait for someone else to fight this battle for you.
Exactly.
Like you need to
Take control.
start thinking for yourself.
Yeah.
Questioning things.
Mm-hmm.
Like challenging the things that don't feel right.
100%. And that kind of leads us to like one of the most fascinating parts of like Bradbury's process, right?
Okay.
Like, so he wrote Fahrenheit 451, a book about burning books.
Yeah.
in a place you would never expect.
Okay, all right, where?
He wrote it in the basement of a library.
A library basement. Wow.
Can you imagine the irony of that?
Yeah.
Like literally surrounded by words and knowledge.
Yeah.
And he's writing about this world that's like hell-bent on destroying it.
That's wild. That's commitment.
Talk about commitment, right?
Yeah.
Like, it really speaks to how deeply he cared about this.
Yeah.
This wasn't just like a story for him, you know?
Right.
It was like a mission.
Yeah, and he even says, right, in one of his letters that he, like, sees writers as having this, like, duty to whisper in people's ears and tell them what to do.
It's not enough to just, like, tell a good story.
Right.
You have to, like, make people feel something.
Yeah.
Make them want to, like, act.
Right. And one of the biggest choices we make, I think, is what we choose to, like, hold on to.
Right.
Right. Like, what we value enough to actually, like, fight for.
Yeah, totally.
Like those book people
Mm-hmm.
memorizing whole texts, right? Just to keep them alive.
It's amazing.
If the world went haywire, right? Like, what piece of knowledge would you become?
Oh.
What would you fight to keep safe?
What stories do you cherish so much that, like, you would carry them with you?
Right.
Even into a world that's, like, trying to, like, erase them.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Bradbury's giving us this, like, call to action disguised as this, like, dystopian novel, you know?
Right.
It's like, don't let the fire start in the first place, you know? Like, protect the things that matter.
Yes.
Speak up, you know? Resist.
100%. And he really believed that. Like, Bradbury had this saying, right, where he said that even the smallest, like, act of defiance,
right,
the quietest voice of dissent can, like, actually make a difference in the world.
Wow.
Like, he really believed that one person could change the world.
So if Fahrenheit 451 could, like, talk, right?
Yeah.
What change do you think it would want to inspire in you?
Ooh, that's a good one.
What fire would it want to ignite?
Ooh, what fire would it want to ignite?
That's something to think about, I guess.
Yeah, something to think about.